Elvis Presley was in the middle of Can't Help Falling in Love at the International Hotel in Las Vegas when he suddenly stopped singing. He walked to the edge of the stage, holding a piece of paper, and said 5 words that silenced the entire room. "I need to read this." For the next 7 minutes, 5,000 people stood in complete silence as Elvis read a letter from an 8-year-old boy who had one final wish before he died. This is the story of the letter that stopped the show and changed everyone who heard it. It was March 23, 1974. The International Hotel in Las Vegas was packed to capacity, as it was every night Elvis performed there. The showroom held about 5,000 people, and every seat was filled. People had flown in from across the country, some from around the world, just to see the King perform. The energy was electric, the way it always was at an Elvis show. Women screamed, cameras flashed, the band was tight, the backup singers were on point, and Elvis was in rare form. He'd already been on stage for about 45 minutes. He'd done all the hits: Suspicious Minds, Burning Love, Hound Dog. The crowd was eating it up. Between songs, Elvis would joke with the audience, tell stories, throw scarves to the women in the front rows. It was classic Elvis, the showman who knew exactly how to work a crowd. Then came Can't Help Falling in Love. It was usually one of the last songs in his set, the moment where everything slowed down and got emotional. The lights would dim. Elvis would often kneel at the edge of the stage, reaching out to touch hands with fans. It was a moment people waited for all night. Elvis was about halfway through the song when something unusual happened. Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager and one of his closest friends, appeared at the side of the stage. This almost never happened during a performance. Joe knew better than to interrupt Elvis while he was singing. But there he was, standing in the wings, holding an envelope and making urgent eye contact with Elvis. Elvis saw him but kept singing. He was a professional. You don't just stop in the middle of a song. But Joe didn't leave. He stayed there, and after a few more lines, Elvis must have realized something was really wrong. He signaled to the band to keep playing and walked over to the side of the stage. Joe handed him the envelope. Even from the front rows, people could see Elvis's expression change as Joe said something quietly to him. Elvis took the envelope, looked at it for a moment, then nodded at Joe. The whole exchange took maybe 15 seconds, but it felt longer because everyone was watching, wondering what was going on. Elvis walked back to center stage. The band was still playing the instrumental part of Can't Help Falling in Love, waiting for him to come back in for the next verse. But Elvis didn't sing. Instead, he raised his hand and the band gradually stopped playing. The room went quiet except for a few confused murmurs from the audience. Elvis stood there for a moment, holding the envelope. Then he looked out at the crowd and said, "I need to read this." 5 words. That's all it took to change the entire atmosphere in that room. People stopped moving. The waitresses who'd been serving drinks froze. Even the guys running the spotlights weren't sure what to do. Elvis opened the envelope slowly. His hands were shaking a little, which people in the front rows could see. He pulled out what looked like 3 handwritten pages. He unfolded them carefully, like they were precious, and started reading to himself. The audience watched as Elvis's face went through a range of emotions. His jaw tightened. His eyes got wet. He took a deep breath that everyone could hear through the microphone. Then he looked up at the audience and said, "This letter was just delivered to me backstage. It's from a little boy named Michael. Michael is 8 years old, and he's at St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis. His nurse wrote this for him because Michael's too sick to write it himself." You could have heard a pin drop. 5,000 people and not a single sound. Elvis cleared his throat and began to read. "Dear Mr. Presley, my name is Michael Thompson. I am 8 years old. I have something called leukemia. The doctors say I'm probably not going to get better. My mama cries a lot, but she tries not to let me see. My nurse, Miss Sarah, is really nice. She told me I could make one wish, anything I wanted, and she would try to make it happen." Elvis paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. People in the audience were already crying. and he hadn't even gotten to the hard part yet. He continued reading. I told Miss Sarah that I wished I could hear you sing in person. Just once. I have all your records. Well, my mama has them, but she plays them for me all the time. When I listen to your songs, I don't feel as scared. Can't Help Falling in Love is my favorite. Mama says you sing it at the end of your shows. Elvis had to stop again. He was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. Several women in the audience were sobbing. Grown men were wiping their eyes. The moment was so raw, so real, that nobody knew what to do except stand there and feel it. I know I can't come to Las Vegas, Elvis read on. The doctors won't let me leave the hospital. And I know you're really busy and famous, but Miss Sarah said she would send you this letter anyway. She said sometimes miracles happen. I don't know if I believe in miracles anymore, but I believe in your music. When you sing, it makes me feel like maybe everything's going to be okay, even when I know it's not. Elvis's voice broke on that last part. He had to pause for a long moment, just breathing, trying to compose himself enough to continue. The band members behind him were crying. The backup singers were holding each other. This wasn't a performance anymore. This was something else entirely. Mr. Presley, Elvis continued, his voice barely steady, I want you to know that your music makes people happy. It makes sick kids like me forget about being sick for a little while. That's a really special thing. I hope you know how special that is. If you ever read this letter, can you do me one favor? The next time you sing Can't Help Falling in Love, can you think of me? That way, even if I'm not there, it'll kind of be like I was. Thank you for all your songs. Thank you for making my mama smile even when things are hard. You're the best. Love, Michael. Elvis finished reading and just stood there, holding the letter. The silence in that room was profound. 5,000 people, all processing what they'd just heard, all crying or trying not to cry, all feeling the weight of this little boy's words. Then Elvis did something nobody expected. He looked up at the audience and said, Michael, buddy, I don't know if you can hear me right now, but I'm going to sing this song for you. And I want everyone here to help me, because if 5,000 people sing this song together, I think you'll be able to hear it all the way in Memphis. I think you'll feel it, and that's going to be our miracle tonight. He turned to the band. From the top, gentlemen, and don't you hold back. The band started playing Can't Help Falling in Love again, but this time it was different. This time it meant something more. Elvis sang it like he'd never sung it before. Every word carried the weight of that letter. Every note was for Michael. And then something magical happened. The audience started singing along, not just humming or mouthing the words, but really singing. 5,000 voices joining Elvis, all singing for a little boy they'd never met, a little boy fighting for his life in a hospital room hundreds of miles away. Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. People who were there that night say they've never experienced anything like it. Strangers were holding hands, people were hugging each other. The whole room was united in this one moment, this one song, this one act of collective love and hope for a child none of them knew. When Elvis got to the final verse, he walked to the very edge of the stage. He was crying. The audience was crying. The band was crying. But they all kept singing, Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. The song ended, and for a moment, nobody moved. Nobody applauded. They all just stood there in this sacred space that had been created. Then Elvis spoke again. I want to make you all a promise right now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Tomorrow morning, I'm getting on a plane to Memphis. I'm going to St. Jude Hospital and I'm going to meet Michael. I'm going to sing this song to him in person. That little boy said he wished he could hear me sing just once. Well, Michael, you're going to get your wish. The crowd erupted, not in the usual screaming Elvis excitement, but in something deeper, applause mixed with tears, people standing and clapping not for a performance, but for humanity, for compassion, for the moment when a superstar proved he was still just a man with a heart. Elvis didn't sing another song that night. He didn't need to. He held up the letter, pressed it to his chest over his heart, and walked off stage. The show was over, but nobody complained. Nobody asked for their money back. What they'd witnessed was worth more than any concert. True to his word, Elvis flew to Memphis the next morning. He went straight to St. Jude Hospital with his guitar. He didn't call the media. He didn't bring cameras. He just went. Joe Esposito and a couple of other guys from his crew went with him, but that was it. When Elvis walked into Michael Thompson's hospital room, the little boy was sleeping. His mother, Janet Thompson, was sitting beside his bed. She looked up, saw Elvis Presley standing in the doorway of her son's hospital room, and gasped. "I got his letter," Elvis said quietly, so as not to wake Michael. "I came to keep a promise." Janet started crying immediately. She couldn't speak, couldn't process what was happening. Elvis walked over and hugged her, let her cry into his shoulder. "It's going to be okay," he whispered, though they both knew it probably wasn't. When Michael woke up, he thought he was dreaming. Elvis Presley was sitting on the edge of his hospital bed, holding a guitar. "Hey there, Michael," Elvis said with that famous smile. "I believe you requested a private concert." Michael's eyes went wide. He looked at his mother, then back at Elvis, trying to understand if this was real. "You came?" he whispered. His voice was weak, but you could hear the wonder in it. "Of course I came," Elvis said. "You wrote me a letter. When someone writes you a letter like that, you show up." Elvis spent 3 hours in that hospital room. He sang "Can't Help Falling in Love" twice because Michael asked him to. He sang other songs. He told Michael stories about being on the road, about meeting other kids, about how music has this magic power to connect people even when they're far apart. He talked to Michael like he was a friend, not a dying child. He asked him about his favorite subjects in school, his favorite foods, whether he liked baseball, normal kid stuff. For 3 hours, Michael wasn't a patient with leukemia. He was just a kid hanging out with Elvis Presley. Before Elvis left, he gave Michael his guitar, the one he'd been playing. "This is for you, buddy," Elvis said. "I want you to have it." "But this is your guitar," Michael said, running his small hand over the smooth wood. "Now it's your guitar," Elvis replied. "And every time you look at it, I want you to remember that you're not alone. You've got thousands of people who sang for you last night. You've got a mama who loves you more than anything, and you've got me. We're all with you, Michael, always." Michael Thompson died 3 weeks later. He was holding that guitar when he passed, his mother said. The last thing he listened to was Elvis singing "Can't Help Falling in Love" on a cassette tape Janet played for him. When Elvis found out Michael had died, he was devastated. He'd known it was coming, but that didn't make it easier. He attended the funeral privately. He paid for all the expenses. He set up a fund to help other families at St. Jude who couldn't afford treatment. But he never talked about it publicly, never used it for publicity, never told the story in interviews. Because for Elvis, it wasn't about being seen doing a good thing. It was just about doing the right thing. The people who were at that Vegas show on March 23, 1974, though, they never forgot. For years afterward, if you met someone who was there that night, all you had to say was "the letter," and they'd know exactly what you meant. They'd tell you about how 5,000 people sang together for a boy they'd never met, about how Elvis stopped his show to honor a dying child's wish. Sarah Mitchell, the nurse who wrote the letter for Michael, kept her job at St. Jude for 30 more years. She said that night, listening to Elvis read Michael's words on the radio broadcast was the moment she knew she'd made the right career choice. Because sometimes, she said, the most important thing you can do is help someone be heard. Elvis Presley died 3 years later in 1977. But the story of the letter and the show that stopped and the little boy who just wanted to hear his favorite singer one time, that story lives on. It reminds us that behind the fame, the jumpsuits, the Vegas shows, and the screaming fans, Elvis was a man who understood what it meant to be human, to feel pain, to want to ease someone else's suffering, even for just a moment. That's the real legacy. Not the number of records sold or sold-out shows, but the 3 hours spent in a hospital room, singing to a little boy who was running out of time. That's the moment that mattered most.